Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to showcase my 100% movement speed, 387 corruption, Monolith Farmer Storm Totem Shaman build, where we just try to objective rush as fast as possible. Shaman is a very underpowered class as of the moment, but after some changes, it seems like Storm Totem is strong enough to carry Shaman to the moon. We grinded all the way up to 387 corruption, and I've done one tier 4 Jurla kill with it. We attempted a few others, but it was not really meant to be due to all of the bugs with dungeons currently. Also as well, this build is a little bad for specifically tier 4 Jurla, as the void beams do wreck your crows no matter how much res you build on them. This build is meant for farming monoliths and rushing between echoes for those fat juicy rewards, as you're getting a large amount of movement speed and single target from Storm Totem, so it's okay that you're not deleting tier 4 Jurla, but you can definitely do it. It is viable. I've done it. If you end up enjoying the content, I'd suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that's the best way to tell me that you want more of this. So the reason I am playing Shaman all of a sudden was to prove my point I made recently. I made a tier list video as a joke, and I swapped out the mastery picture of Shaman for a poop emoji. A lot of people were confused, so I had to showcase the Shaman's problem, and then I found this build instead, with the help of a friend of mine, Rain. This build completely floored me after playing it for a while. I thought Shaman was terrible, but it turns out Storm Totem's strong enough to carry Shaman to the moon, so that's funny. Storm Totem is the Shaman exclusive mastery skill, and it has been okay for a long time now. It shoots out 3 lightning bolts every time it casts, and it can do a bit of damage. It was finally bug fixed this patch, as when you were grabbing area for the individual lightning blasts, it would increase the radius that they would also strike at, which means as you grab more area, you were getting less and less overlaps with Storm Totem on a singular target. This has been fixed, so grabbing all that extra area of effect no longer deletes your single target, which is amazing. This was enough to push Storm Totem over the edge. We also abuse another mechanic that was added a while ago, and that's the interaction between Storm Crows and Totems. If you have Aspect of the Crow enabled in Storm Crow's tree, your crows will cast a buff on you that lasts for 8 seconds and gives you a little bit of flat lightning for spells and attacks. Now, this on its own is not strong, but the nodes after it allow your crows to cast it on allies, which reduces its duration by 50%. Then Arborist makes it so your crows will only target totems, and also removes the 10-second cooldown from the prior node. So your crows will just sit there buffing your totems, which is amazing. Now, if I only have one totem, you can stack a very large amount of stacks, up to 70-ish currently. That is close to 210 extra flat lightning damage. That is a lot because Storm Totem only starts off with like 20 flat. This is the main interaction that makes Storm Totem function at higher difficulties as a solo totem build. We then, of course, for some extra juice, we hit it with our upheaval. Every time we hit our totem with it, it gains 15% more damage for 4 seconds and can stack. So we attack 3 times per second currently. We can give 140% more damage to our totem very easily. This is great as it allows us to have something to do while we wait for our totem to kill bosses. Now, one thing I want to mention, and you're probably thinking to yourself, Dread, you have 2000 HP, aren't you insanely squishy at 350 corruption? No, we're not that squishy. That is because Shaman gets a lot of access to armor stacking and aspect of the boar. This means we have a large amount of damage reduction for hits, meaning that things just don't hit us as hard as other builds. The reason we are doing this is so our healing is significantly more effective. We use Warcry, Heal, and Maelstrom Heal to sustain ourselves since we are not hitting enemies to leech from, so we need a source of sustain that is different than normal builds. Specifically, Warcry has a node in it that gives you 300 flat healing, and it gets tripled when you're in low life. So if we are really low, it's a gigantic emergency heal. With our endurance percentage in Berserker node, it means we can consistently keep ourselves topped off with Warcry since we get to low health, but it doesn't matter because our low health is very strong, and then we instantly heal back up to top, which is really nice. Now for chip damage, we also have access to Maelstrom. We have an average of 16 stacks on us thanks to Warcry and self-casting it. which means each of those heal for 6 each. So we have about 100 healing average per second, which is a base, which is then affected by our healing effectiveness as well. All of this is great, but what pushes us over the edge is the absurd amount of movement speed that Shaman has access to. Thanks to Storm Totem, it can give us 40% increased movement speed if it has shocked an enemy recently, which is all the time. This combined with primeless bases, movement speed boots, and silver rings, it means we can easily reach over 100% movement speed while doing monoliths. This lets us zoom through much easier. We also have access to teleport from our storm crows, which means we end up becoming insanely mobile for Shaman. With all that being said, I really enjoyed my time with Storm Totem. I don't think Shaman itself is good as a mastery, but Storm Totem has been so strong and so satisfying that I ended up enjoying my entire time playing the build anyways. Now, let's go in game so I can give you a much more in-depth look at the build. Like I said before, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos like this one. Now let's go in game, shall we? Alright, here we are in game with the build. Sadly, I named my Shaman poop emoji. It should have been named Chad Shaman build or just Chad Totem build, as this build ended up being significantly better than I assumed it was going to be. So yeah, fun. Now, for the general gameplay, like just how the rotation works in game, I'm going to go to the Monolith of Fate here, just so I can show you guys this. Hopefully the loading screen does not take forever. Now, essentially, you're just simply going to summon your Storm Crows, right? And these Storm Crows, they'll be casting on your totem. As they cast on your totem, as you can tell, they get a lot of aspect of the Crow stacks, which means that your Storm Totem will have a bunch of flat damage. Then that Storm Totem will, of course, hit enemies, and it'll do a lot of damage. Now, of course, for healing and stuff, we make sure to spam Warcry and Maelstrom on cooldown. We do need a significant portion of mana regeneration to make this very easy to do, because we are spamming upheaval while we're doing all this on single target. So on single target or when you're clearing monos, the kind of the rotation is to just mainly make sure you're keeping up your stacks of Maelstrom by Warcrying and all that. But then you place on your totem, come up to it, smack it a few times, and then walk off. And by the time you do that, Storm Totem will just clear the entire screen essentially until you get into the higher difficulties where you might have to stay on a screen or two because, of course, things are much tankier. So that's pretty much the overall like play style of the build. Now, for the skills themselves, let's talk about Storm Totem. So we, of course, first take 3 nodes into Lightning Raider. Eventually, if you get +3 to Totem or +4 to Storm Totem, you want to put a point in here. We then take 4 points into Storm's Reach, but like I said, another point would be put in here if you get +4 to Storm Totem. Then, of course, as well, Intensity, which is another node we put more points into. Just gives us a bunch of extra damage, bunch of extra AoE, bunch of extra cast speed. Cast speed is really strong for this, as it's one of the things that we don't have as much. Also, as well, mini critical strike multiplier is very strong, which I'll explain later how we get. Then we have 2 points into Static Field Travel, then 3 points into Exploit Weakness for 45% more damage against shocked enemies, which is great. Then 4 points into Storm Riders so that whenever our Storm Totem is hitting stuff, it gives us a bunch of movement speed. If you're doing bosses a lot more, like T4 Drillas and stuff like that, you don't care about going as fast, you can take points out of Storm Rider and put it into Lightning Raider, Storm Reach, and Intensity to help your clear and single target. And if you're having problems with mana, you can always take a point out of this and put it in the mana efficiency on Storm Totem. Now for upheaval, only a few things matter with this, specifically Inexhaustible, giving us minus mana cost, so we can spam upheaval. The Mantle Strike, making it so enemies can't dodge, so the enemies dodge monos, makes it so they can't dodge our upheaval, which is nice. We have 3 points into Primal Bulwark. It gives us a bunch of extra attunement and armor. I mean, it gives us armor and endurance threshold. We get a lot of it from this because you're technically supposed to be attunement stacking with this build. I don't have that much attunement, so this isn't helping as much, but eventually you want to have like attunement everywhere, which makes this go crazy. Then, of course, we have 1 point to through Muck and Clay, which makes it so that whenever we go below 6 Maelstroms, we consume the stacks here and give us more Maelstrom stacks, which is cool. Then we grab the range here in Terraform and Clash. It makes it so that we can hit enemies and our Storm Totem, because the way that this works is we want to be able to hit the enemy because we want to apply Armor Shred and we want to keep Berserker stacks up. but we also want to be hitting our totem. So we kind of like want the boss to be here. We want ourselves to be here. We want the totem to be in the middle. So we're hitting both enemies and hitting our totem at the same time, which is mainly how this build works for single target, which is great. 2 points travel into Unstoppable Strength, 1 point travel into Sundering Strike, 1 point travel into Rock Upsurge, then 1 point into Master of the Totem. This stacks, and it can stack as much as you want. The more attack speed you have, the more stacks of this buff you'll get, and it's really strong for single target, which is why we're running it. Then, of course, let's talk about crows. We take 3 points into Avis. We want as much cast speed as possible for our Storm Crows, because the more cast speed they have, the more stacks we can get. 2 points travel to Aspect of the Crow. You don't need 3 points in this. 1 point into Wisdom of the Storm. This makes it so that it can apply it to allies, but it has less duration and has a 10-second cooldown. Then 1 point to Arborist, so that it has no cooldown, but it always only spams it on totems. This is the reason why we have a singular totem, why we're not running something like Thorn Totem or something like that. That's because your actual Storm Crows will steal your upheaval, right? And you will steal your buffs, right? You don't want Thorn Totems over here, otherwise your Crows will go and cast on them. So the Storm Totem, but we want it on the Storm Totem, right? We take 5 points of Ornithology to get 30 flat intelligence. This is very important as we're running Fairbor's Chisel for a bunch of flat critical strike chance per intelligence. So we have 32% base crit for our totem, which is 37% in total, which then we just get a little bit of crit. We get like about 100% crit chance, and we're almost always critting. Of course, you can always mess with these numbers, add a little bit of int on your gear, stuff like that, to provide ourselves with more crit, but that's just the balance that I've reached so far. You can also get, of course, minion crit chance on gear as well. Then down here, we take points travel into Sky's Passage, makes it so Crow Storm actually uses a teleport, so it teleports us and our crows with us, which is really strong while farming monos, because it makes it so that we can keep our crows with us. It's really good. It's like really, really good for Primalist. And then, of course, we take 2 points into Thunderous Blast to reduce cooldown length per Storm Crow we have. So we get to spam it essentially. We have about a 5.6 cooldown. We can get cooldown on gear with it as well, like on rings and stuff like that. You can get cooldown on boots to make it even shorter. So it's really good. Now for Warcry, it's your stereotypical Warcry setup, mainly Shallow Breath, so 50% cooldown. We want the Berserker stacks here for Fury Strikes, because we want the attack speed. I went with one less node in it because I wanted all these nodes. We want Invigorate so that our Breath of Atera heals our allies. Of course, we cleanse ailments. This is really strong in higher corruption, as you want to be able to cleansing all those poisons and mark for deaths and stuff like that, which is really cool. Then 4 points to Whirlpool, so we can keep up our Maelstrom stacks, which will heal us as well. Maelstrom, stereotypical utility Maelstrom setup, mainly Wind Fury, Windswept, so you get movement speed and stuff, get the mana efficiency, get the stack length, get the healing winds for the healing. This is how we're able to sustain ourselves so well. Then, of course, 3 points into Beneath the Waves. This means that we just cast Warcry, then Maelstrom, and then we have 8 stacks instantly. And of course, we can do this and keep up stacks very easily that way, especially with how much mana regen we have, which is really cool, right? So that's pretty much it for skills. Now for passives here, this is your stereotypical setup for passives. We are grabbing a bunch of flat. Dread, why are we grabbing a bunch of flat if we're getting a bunch of flat from our totem? Well, the main reason why is because when I place my Storm Totem down, they don't reach max stacks instantly. It takes about 4 seconds for them to reach max stacks, and that sucks for clear. It's poo-poo for clear, because your Storm Totem will do no damage, specifically in higher corruption where you don't have that much time to boost up your totem, which means that we need to grab flat on the tree like Elder Branch, which is 15 flat because we are wielding an axe here. We also, of course, grab flat inside here, an extra 10 flat, then another 16. This gives us enough flat to make it so that if we have to like place our Storm Totem down and then run through, it can still do damage, even though it doesn't have that many stacks. So overall, that's really strong for clear specifically. So that's why I grab all those extra nodes. And of course, who's going to complain about more damage, right? Now, as well, we get the Berserker for the less damage taken, which is really good. Make sure to get 5 points in Sky Warrior to give us cooldown recovery speed for Crow Storm, which is great, so we can teleport more. The attack and cast speed when we have a totem that'll apply to your upheaval, more stacks. 8 points in Silent Protector. We're stacking armor with this build and stacking regen, meaning that we can get a lot of extra armor from our Storm Totem, which is really cool. 5 points in ancestral speed means that we can get totem cast speed. Totem cast speed is very strong and very mandatory for this build to feel good, so you want as much totem cast speed as possible. We grab the flat, like I said. Grab sky armor for the flat armor. Armor is like one of our best ways of scaling EHP in endgame, so we want to grab as much armor as possible. 1 point to Iron Bark, making it so that our totems do not get stunned. We don't want our Storm Totem get stunned constantly by boss attacks and stuff like that, so this makes your clear feel a lot better because your Storm Totem will stop getting stunned. Then, of course, for Beastmaster, the usual suite of aspect of the board, giving us 30% reduced damage taken. Also gives 16% from nearby enemies. We get aspect of the board on melee hit, which makes us want to be using our upheaval all the time. 8 points into the chase here. Now, minion cast speed is multiplicative because not only does it increase the cast speed of the totem, it also increases the cast speed of the Storm Crows, applying buffs to our totem. So that means we get more maximum stacks. So minion cast speed is very good. We also grab aspect of the shark for the attack speed. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the gearing here, the gearing is a little different. We're running an Artor's Legacy. We have 3 crows. This gives us our 3rd crow. That's very important because if we have a 3rd crow, it almost gives us 30% more damage. So Artor's is very strong. It also gives us a bunch of melee attack speed, which means that, of course, it makes our upheaval go faster. Amulet, just increase minion health, mana regen. By the way, this is not required to make the build function, by the way. This is just something you'll have to grind for. This build is like completely solo viable, by the way. You don't need the chisel early on. You don't need Artor's Legacy. You don't need Jirla's Obsession. These are just things that you'll require eventually if you want to start pushing high corruption, right? Then, of course, Fairboard's Chisel here, base crit for our intelligence. Like I said, we get intelligence while we have crows up, which then, of course, gives our totem a bunch of base crit. We also like crit multi for totems as well. Our chest here, this is a pretty sexy chest. I'm sad that increased armor isn't life, but we're stacking armor, so it's fine. This is like almost best in slot axe for offhand. The main reason we're using an axe is so we can go with attack speed, get that minion spell damage. This also gives us a source of shred armor on hit, which gives us about 30 to 40% more damage on bosses. And then, of course, frailty makes it so bosses deal less damage. Now, you would want this on a winged axe base, but I'm not really complaining because it's only like 4% movement speed. So that's fine. Rings mainly with minion health, mana regen, crit avoid, life, stuff like that. Opal rings are really cool, but I would prefer having silver rings instead. Same thing, healing effectiveness, mana regen, minion life. We do want 2 sources of minion health regen on our ranger's belt and our relic here. These 2 minion health regens are very strong because it makes it so our Storm Crows don't instantly fall over on bosses. And eventually you'd want an Artor's with minion health regen on it, or plus the Storm Crow, plus the Storm Totem. But if you get like life regen on your helmet, it's insane because it lets you drop one of these prefixes. Although you could go for 3 prefixes, and that might make it so that you can do T4 Jirla a lot easier. So it's really up to your discretion there. But getting 2 minion health regen rolls is important as hell for this build. So make sure you do that. And then, of course, Jirla's Obsession, the cast speed, like I said, double dips. You get the Void Res to make it so your crows don't die to Jirla beams. The Adaptive Flat is cool for your totem. So all of this is great. Other modifiers you could go for is like resistances, mainly like Fire Res. It would actually be really good if you got Fire Res on it, because Fire Res is one of the it's like one of the things that will actually kill your crows, because there are enemies like specifically Covenant of Dominion that does a lot of fire damage, like absurd, ridiculous amount of fire damage. Most of the time, the only times I've seen my crows die often, like consistently, is on Blood Dragon, the blood pools in Reign of Dragons, right? Because it does a percentage amount of your health as damage, as physical. Then, of course, there is the Jirla Void Beams. Jirla can kill your crows kind of easily with the Void Beams. And then, of course, Covenant of Dominions with their Ignites will also kill your crows, which is like annoying as hell. right? Overall. But yeah, Drill's Obsession, really good item for this build. There's also that other node that gives you +2 to spell totem skills. You don't technically need that unless you're trying to like you don't really need that. Drill's Obsession is much better. Then, of course, the boots, I just went for as much HP as possible because, like I said, we are struggling in terms of HP because I did not hit HP here and I don't have HP here. Then for a relic here, same kind of difference, minion health and all that. I am currently at 360% minion health. You'd probably want a little bit more than this, but this is all I could squeeze out with my current gear because we're not only trying to scale healing effectiveness, we have to scale minion health, and we also have to scale minion health regen and of course minion damage. So prefixes on this build are very starved. For idols, Throne of Ambition is your best in slot because since we're scaling armor, we get 40% more armor on bosses if we're hitting them enough, which makes it so we can phase tank things a lot easier. Idols want at least 100% chance to crit with your totem because that combined with of course the crows giving us intelligence means that we can always be critting on a boss. Like I said, you'll have to mess around with this. And then other idols are just whatever you can shove in. Mainly try to get as much healing effectiveness as humanly possible so that we can actually heal ourselves, which is good. That's pretty much it for gearing. For blessings, your best in slot blessing specifically is the minion all res on Reign of Dragons to make it so your storm crows don't die nearly as much in high corruption, which is good. Spirits of Fire, you want the flat armor. Then in Age of Winter, you want percentage armor so that you're tankier. You want as much armor scaling as possible in this build to make up for the fact that you don't have that much HP. I went for Void Res to make it so I didn't need Void Res, but you technically don't have to run with this Void Res blessing because we get plenty of Void Res from Drill's Obsession. So you could actually swap this out for probably flat HP and then like get Void Res elsewhere in gear. And then for ending the storm, we went with Lightning Shred so that we can shred lightning so we get 10 stacks of shock and 10 stacks of lightning shred for ourselves, which is great. And that's pretty much it for the character. With all that being said, if you have any questions, leave them down below. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your way wherever you're at.